Ancient battles are brutal affairs. Men fight as instruments of war, killing and dying in the pursuit of victory. But even amongst the carnage of antiquity, some battles stand out as especially savage and horrific. One such battle was fought in the ancient Indian city of Baya. There, two armies clashed in a battle so deadly it almost made Alexander the Great abandon his empire. In less than 20 years, Alexander had carved out an empire that stretched from Greece to India. He did so by defeating many enemies, including the Persian Empire, which he utterly destroyed. And while there were many great battles along Alexander's path to India, none were more devastating than the battle at Baya. That's because the death toll is staggering. It is said that the corpses were piled up so high they could be used as building material afterwards. Alexander the Great is one of history's most celebrated figures. His legend has only grown since his untimely death. We remember him for his military genius and for being a great friend to the Greeks. But while it's true that Alexander loved his homeland and did much to advance Greek culture, it's also true that he was willing to do terrible things to achieve his goals. In fact, in his pursuit of absolute power, he ended up being just like the tyrants he claimed to oppose. Let me explain. You see, before he became king, Alexander wanted to be the greatest conqueror in history, even if it meant taking liberties with the truth. You know those times when your teacher tells you something that doesn't quite add up? Maybe a date is off or a name just seems wrong. Well, in ancient sources there are lots of stories like that. I mean, how else do you explain the story of Alexander's horse, Bucephalus, taming the untamable war elephant? Or how about the time Alexander supposedly befriended an entire tribe of nomadic horse archers by playing the flute? These stories are obviously embellished and may have been written to promote Alexander's greatness, and the truth is he didn't need any help in that department. Alexander was already considered a demigod by his contemporaries. His father, King Philip II of Macedon, was assassinated when Alexander was 20, and upon his father's death, he took the throne. This made him the third king in his dynasty and the first of Macedonian descent. And although his lineage was somewhat disputed, there was no doubt in anyone's mind that he was the rightful king. For the past century, Macedon had been nothing more than a minor kingdom on the northern periphery of Greece. But under Philip's reign, that all changed. Philip modernized the Macedonian army and used it to subjugate the other Greek states. By the time of his death, only Thebes and Sparta remained independent, and it seemed likely that they too would fall to the Macedonian juggernaut soon enough. Alexander inherited this empire and saw himself as its champion. He would bring Greece together and use it as the instrument of his own greatness. But not everyone shared his enthusiasm. The Spartans and the Thebans bitterly resented Macedonia and eagerly awaited their chance to strike back. Alexander spent much of his early reign suppressing rebellions in Greece. It was hard to rule such a diverse collection of people. They just wanted to be left alone to govern themselves. As a result, many of Alexander's early battles were against fellow Greeks, but with order restored in Greece, Alexander set his sights further afield. He defeated the Persians and their allies, including the once mighty Egyptians, and continued east. He dreamed of conquering the entire known world, but this proved harder than he thought. His army was exhausted and supplies were low. Even worse, the local rulers had united to resist him, and nowhere was this resistance more fierce than in India. At the time, northwestern India was ruled by King Porus. He was a minor power among a collection of minor powers who all resisted Alexander's advance. Together, these rulers fielded an army of somewhere between 70 and 80,000 troops, but despite being outnumbered, Alexander felt confident. His army was larger and better trained than Porus's. Not to mention the Macedonians were battle-hardened, having fought countless wars. To get to Porus, Alexander had to cross the Beas River, but when he got there, he found that it was blocked by the Indian army. As a result, Alexander was forced to make camp nearby and prepare for battle. Today, the site of that battle is a mystery. No archaeological evidence has been found to confirm where Alexander fought Porus, but ancient accounts do give us clues as to the terrain. We know that the river was wide and shallow, and that the fighting took place on ground higher than the river. With this in mind, modern scholars believe that the battle took place near the town of Firozepur, Pakistan. Alexander spent 3 days organizing his camp and preparing for battle. When the time came, he led his army into battle. As always, he led from the front, driving his elite companion cavalry personally. To his right rode his friend and half-brother Ptolemy, while to his left was his other half-brother Parmenion. and to support them were infantry units from various parts of his empire, including Thrace, Thessaly, and Greece proper. Against them were the forces of King Porus. At the heart of the Indian army were the infantry, mostly foot soldiers armed with swords and bows and arrows, but on the flanks were the war elephants. According to Plutarch, there were around 30 of them, and each elephant was mounted by 2 men, a charioteer to control the elephant, and an archer to rain arrows down on the enemy. The battle began with a cavalry charge. Alexander and his companions crashed into the Indian princes who broke ranks and fled. Without hesitation, Alexander pursued them, chasing them all the way to their infantry. This is where the real fighting started. The Macedonians had never seen anything like Porus's war elephants. These giant creatures were like nothing they had ever seen before. The horses would panic and rear up, trampling their own men. The soldiers in the ranks would get caught up in the elephants' tusks and pulled to the ground. The elephants would then use their tusks to gore the soldiers like a bull in a corrida. For the first time in his life, Alexander was afraid. He realized that his cavalry alone couldn't win the day. But then something happened that turned the tide. As Alexander was rallying his men, he noticed that the Indian infantry were advancing towards his left flank. That's when he called for Parmenion to lead a rescue mission. Parmenion picked up the call and charged the Indian infantry, driving them back from his brother. Then Alexander did the same to the right flank, hitting the Indians so hard that they fled the field. With their infantry broken, the war elephants panicked. Their riders were gone, and without guidance, they ran away from the battlefield. Victory was Alexander's, but it was costly. We don't know exactly how many men died, but the numbers given by ancient historians are truly frightening. In the end, Alexander conquered India and returned home to the title of world conqueror, but the battle at Baea would haunt him until his death. It changed Alexander forever. It humbled him and tempered his ambition. In fact, it's possible that the battle at Baea is what caused him to start his famous, or infamous, After Me campaign. He was tired of conquests and wanted to settle down and enjoy the fruits of his labor. Alexander the Great is remembered as a hero of Greece, a godlike warrior who conquered the known world. But he wasn't a god. He wasn't perfect. He made mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes were terrible. At the Battle of Baea, he unleashed an unstoppable force of destruction onto the world. He leveled entire cities and slaughtered thousands of innocent civilians. But nowhere was this more evident than in his treatment of the soldiers. Of his 300,000-strong army, only 12,000 survived the battle at Baea. Where did they all go? Well, many of them are buried in the sands of India, victims of Alexander's insatiable thirst for power. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Alexander the Great was a brilliant strategist and tactician, or was he simply a ruthless conqueror who cared little for the lives of his soldiers or the people he conquered? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an upload.